On the morning of the 11th of August, the participants gathered at the ramp of the former train station at the concentration camp of Buchenwald. Personally, I joined the march because I'm convinced it's so important to look at Germany's history. We need to do something about it. I want to declare from Switzerland that we belong together and that we march for Israel together. Saying on behalf of my ancestors, but also as a German, hey, I'm so sorry, and bringing reconciliation into the whole thing.
And I kind of relate because that's what they wanted to do here. They wanted to take everybody that was Jewish out. And as far as I'm concerned, I was born a Jew, I will die a Jew, and nobody but God can take that away from me. So I came here to make a stand for who I am as a Jew.
The same day, a large German newspaper published an article on former prisoners of Buchenwald breaking their silence. Quote, "One by one, the victims are breaking their silence. Individual stories emerge from this group photo of hell. At last, the full extent of their suffering is put into words." The beginning of the march. 5 days following the routes of the death marches. 1,500 miles are waiting for the participants. A life-changing experience for many.
Here the stones could tell of what they seen. If the soil could speak of the blood it soaked in. Who are we in this moment of time? If the skies could weep on what they've seen, all those tears would flood the earth and the seas. Who are we in this moment of time? Never, never, never again. This should never happen again. Faithful history might stay a mystery, but today you can take a stand. Say never again.
On TV there have been many reports on this era, but still it is important for every one of us to face this time personally, asking ourselves, what if I had been there? What would I have done? And then asking ourselves honestly, what did my parents do? This is something that can weigh heavily on my family, a guilt that still overshadows my family. That is a question each one of us should be asking himself.
I did research in my own family, and I came across some amazing results. My grandfather, for instance, was a judge in the Nazi era, and it's obvious he would never have held such a position if he hadn't served the regime.
I always thought we as a family didn't really have much to do with these events, but I was badly mistaken, and I think my story is typical for many others. All I had ever known about my grandpa was that he had been in the war somehow. The story I knew was he had been a radio operator behind enemy lines, so he had been harmless. In his documents, he is listed there for 2 months, and at that time the same happened all over the place. Previously, I had never realized that the war in the East was a completely different war than the war in the West. Right from the very start, Hitler had intended a war of extermination, motivated by his racial ideology, and he was bent on destroying the civilian population also. There was one town, for example, that was also listed in the documents on my grandpa. 50,000 people used to live there, and 2 months later there were only 361 people left. Town after town, the same story. Suddenly I had to face the simple truth that my grandpa had been present at mass shootings and all these other terrible things. There is nobody who wasn't involved or who was innocent, whose hands are not stained with blood. When I received this information, all I could do was go and hide in the bathroom. I was crying and didn't know what to do with all of this information. Suddenly my world collapsed around me, and the whole issue of National Socialism had taken on a completely different meaning for me.
Among the participants of the march, there were many guests from abroad. Some of them descendants of Holocaust survivors from Messianic congregations in the United States. Also part of the march were 2 Holocaust survivors, Rose Price and Peter Lott. They had been witnesses of the gruesome martyrdom in the concentration camps with torture and medical experiments.
Aber
if you do not forgive,
wenn du nicht vergibst,
think about it. But if you do not forgive,
denk da mal drüber nach. Wenn du nicht vergibst,
neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses.
dann wird dir auch dein Vater im Himmel deine Schuld nicht vergeben.
No matter how bad is this tragedy,
Und ganz egal, wie schlimm die Tragödie ist,
we have to learn how to forgive one another.
wir müssen es lernen, einander zu vergeben.
Otherwise, the same thing gonna repeat itself.
Sonst wird sich das Gleiche immer nur weiter wiederholen.
60 years ago, tragedy happened,
Vor 60 Jahren passierte eine Tragödie.
and yet we cannot forgive one another.
Aber trotzdem sind wir außerstande, einander zu vergeben.
And I said, what the hell did I do wrong?
Und dann habe ich gefragt, was um alles habe ich denn falsch gemacht?
And he says,
Und er sagt,
you curse your mother,
du hast deine Mutter verflucht.
you want a dad.
Du bist todeswürdig.
And that's, and the Bible says,
Weil die
you will
Bibel
be
das
put to
sagt,
death.
dass die, die ihre Eltern verfluchen,
Before
todeswürdig sind.
I can forgive you,
Und ehe ich dir vergeben kann,
you have to forgive them.
musst du ihnen vergeben.
And then I understood.
Und dann habe ich verstanden.
So I started forgiving.
Und ich habe gesagt, ich vergebe ihnen.
Forgive Paul Werner Happe,
Ich vergebe Paul Werner Hoppe,
the SS officers,
den SS-Offizieren,
the doctors.
den Ärzten.
And then something happened.
Und dann ist was passiert.
The peace came upon me.
Plötzlich kam Friede über mich.
And I was free.
Und dort,
See, I was
und ich war frei.
free.
Ich war frei,
With joy.
voller Freude.
I started loving people.
Ich habe angefangen, Menschen zu lieben.
No more bitterness.
War keine Bitterkeit mehr,
No more anger.
kein Zorn.